Hello and welcome to the NVR Podcast, Season 2, Episode 12. I'm Rachael Aylmer.
And I'm Peter Jakob.
And today we're talking about heroes, role models, NVR. Here we are. How did we get here, Peter, after much deliberation and agreeing to this title?
Well, it's an interesting story, isn't it? NVR was derived from certain forms of sociopolitical resistance and movements, famously led by people like Martin Luther King. Rosa Parks played an important role in the American Civil Rights Movement, and Mahatma Gandhi in India, whose movement of Satyagraha helped achieve the independence of India from British colonial rule. And we've been having conversations within, groups of colleagues about the role of Gandhi and how, if at all, we should speak about Gandhi in our training in NVR.
Yeah, that's been a current theme in our organization. Yeah,
and we've, in certain ways, we have learned very much from Gandhi, from his thinking, from his practices of resistance.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, I think the notion that nonviolent resistance seeks to resist harm without doing harm. And in so positioning itself, the nonviolent resistor does not see anyone as an enemy. So these are very important principles. Yet at the same time, many things that Gandhi did over the course of his lifetime, many things he wrote, were questionable. And a colleague raised that, a colleague from an African country raised the issue of some of Gandhi's writings, which were derogatory towards Black Africans, and his preference for working with Indian people of Indian origin in South Africa, in the first sort of liberation movement that he led. And, that has brought about the question, should we speak about Gandhi? Or if so, how do we deal with with someone, with a role model, and undoubtedly a hero of political nonviolent resistance, who in part is questionable, a questionable hero. Yeah.
And through that being highlighted in our training, it's brought about much discussion amongst our associates, and about how some of this discussion we weren't aware of back in 2018 in Ghana, with the removal of the statue in a university campus of Gandhi, the statue of Gandhi being removed, and a petition to have that statue removed in such a poignant society where students are being taught, etc. So it has brought about massive discussions, hasn't it, between us all, and how we can perhaps reposition our thinking and the way that we explain Gandhi in our work.
Well, and I think it can be helpful to try and, as much as we can, put ourselves in the shoes of a colleague who is Black African, who may have heard or experienced racist writings, and then being presented with Gandhi as a wise and brave role model. That would could very well create a lot of distress
and confusion.
And that's right. What do you feel would be the confusion?
Well, and discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, when there's always food for thought and difference of opinions, and not everyone is right. But when something is glaringly wrong, yet somebody doesn't see that or aren't aware, and they need to be educated about that, holding somebody in such an esteemed place, not knowing some of that works and some of that writing that Gandhi had. I don't know what year it was when he wrote those books, but yeah, I think it could lead to some confusion, thinking that we knew that about Gandhi, yet we were still holding him in high esteem. Confusion. Yeah.
So from a training participant's point of view, not knowing that the trainer did not know about this aspect of Gandhi's life and writings, they would then wonder, why are they teaching this? Do they consider it irrelevant? So that's a really important point. I guess I was thinking just now of the imperfection, and I guess when we use people as role models, or even as heroes, as it were, to inspire us, I guess I think the hero is more emotional in a way than just the sheer role model. I think we probably want to see them as in some way extraordinary. Maybe that is why the Catholic Church continues to proclaim sainthood. People are seen to be extraordinary, almost flawless, and then we discover that, well, our heroes are imperfect, and in some cases very imperfect, and we need to question that. So it tells me, I guess, that we need to be pretty cautious, and we need to be pretty critical of our heroes as well. But at the same time, we need them. At the same time, we need role models, I think. I don't know. What's your take on that?
I like that. I like that balanced, kind of measured response, really. That we need to be well read. We need to understand their background, and we need to know why we're placing our heroes in such esteem, but also that not everyone is perfect, and people can make mistakes, and history, everyone has a history. But yeah, I think it's important that we have them. Kids have them as growing up. They're little heroes and cartoon characters and things they want to aspire to, history, people that invent things and all of that. It's important. It's part of our emotional development, holding people that we find fascinating or interesting or helpful, have done a good cause or brought about change in society, or even just in ourselves, just in our own little personal arenas. People who have experienced or suffered or whatever. So I think, can you hear that magpie in the background?
Yes. Is that in your background? I thought it's in my background.
Apologies for everyone listening to that 2 o'clock magpie.
I mean, what do you think? I mean, when you look at it in a really practical sense, like in an NVR parent group, or working with parents and speaking about the experiences of other parents, where do you experience that parents look to others whether they are other parents or political figures or whoever, to be role models for them.
Yeah, the voice that has, the like-minded voice, the position that you relate to, as a parent in a group setting, looking across the room and thinking, I'm in the same position as that parent. Their child's the same age as my child. I can really relate to their story. It fits with me, and they're sitting here talking about this approach, and they get it, they understand it, they're embracing change, they're feeling all positive. I might latch on to that person as a parent in a group.
So, and particularly if that person has achieved something that I have not yet been able to achieve, or maybe that I felt is unachievable.
Brings about hope, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yet she did that. I guess it can be a double-edged sword, because then I will be inclined to want to see her, that other parent, as a very special person.
Mm-hmm.
I may wish in certain ways to be more like her. It could be that there's also a risk that I put myself down by comparison.
Yeah.
So maybe there's even a need for the role model to be flawed and to be perceived as flawed.
Yeah.
Just like me, they're flawed, I'm flawed, yet they did something that's quite extraordinary. And perhaps if they did it, maybe I can do it too.
Yeah. And the flawed bit, it's that we're human, we make mistakes. Here sits this parent in front of me who I'm beginning to, admire and, celebrate what they're doing and achieving with their family. Yet they then come the following week confessing that they swore at their kid.
Yeah.
And lost their position.
And that humanizes them.
It makes it all much more palatable.
Yeah.
Knowing that the person opposite me who I held in esteem actually is a parent just like me.
Yeah. And nonetheless, they have certain experiences, they have certain kinds of knowledge or skills, which I can try to emulate. I have not acquired them yet in the same way. And I was just thinking of going back a little bit, you said something about we all need I can't remember the exact words that you used, but we all need it in life in general. And I was thinking of the heroes and role models of yesteryear and some new heroes and role models, So I'm thinking, for example, little girls growing up used to have to look to male heroes. There weren't so many female heroes. There was, but now we're seeing more and more female heroes being proclaimed in the media, in literature, and so forth. There are female superheroes, and girls can look to emulate female superheroes. And I was thinking, even in the area of nonviolent resistance, maybe Gandhi was still in a certain way, a very masculine form of nonviolent resistor. And when we look to the American civil rights movement, the civil rights activists were specifically pushing Martin Luther King to spearhead the movement because it had to be a man at the time. And, it's only in recent years that we've been speaking a lot more about Rosa Parks. How come Rosa Parks didn't spearhead the movement? Why is it that she did not carry the same weight as a male pastor in church? So nowadays we can much more readily imagine someone like Rosa Parks spearheading the movement, you know. So I guess in the area of NVR, working in the family and the community, I guess the image of the hero and role model may be changing.
I think it is. I was just talking to our colleague Tony earlier. We were talking about change and how we were referring to our last podcast around to nag or not to nag. And someone had challenged me in a conversation to challenge you. Men can be still seen as a nag, you know, that it's not just a term for women. And that brought about a conversation with myself and Tony talking about change, how changes are coming about in language, in referencing, you know, people who are in a position of privilege and who are signposted, i.e. Martin Luther King. Wasn't there somebody you were talking to me about, someone very similar to Martin Luther King, but had never had that acknowledgement or recognition for his work? And there was also another female like Rosa Parks, but she hadn't also been acknowledged for her resistance and protests back in the day.
Do you think, Rachel, at my age, I still remember who I was talking about a while ago?
If it was you, I should have remembered everything. I can't. But anyway, it's like, why was it Rosa Parks that was?
Well, that's interesting because a few weeks or months, I think, before that, there had been a precedent to Rosa Parks refusing to give up her seat in a bus in Montgomery, Alabama, as an act of nonviolent resistance. And it was a teenage girl or young woman who was pregnant.
That's right.
Who refused to give up her seat.
Yeah.
And then it was decided among civil rights activists that this would be a very good form of direct action, but it had to be a respectable woman.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because on the one hand, I think that represents the prejudices within that group of civil rights activists. And at the same time, it represents the racism of society at large, which looked at African American women as, well, you know, their respectability was doubtful.
Yeah.
So you needed to have a woman who conveyed that image of respectability. Yeah.
For some reason, Peter, your video's just gone off, but that's okay.
I've noticed it has gone off, but well, we can just keep talking, can't we?
Yeah, and it, you know, I think this is a topic that could go on for hours, really, as you begin to unpick and unravel some of these positions and some of the history and the backlog of people's positions and what they do and what they've said. I wasn't aware of this this position that Gandhi had taken all those years ago, and I wasn't aware of the petition to remove his statue in that university campus in Ghana. But I am now, and now I am aware and more educated that has now brought about change in how we might introduce Gandhi in our foundation level training. And that's key.
I think we can introduce Gandhi as someone whose practices we can learn from.
Yeah.
I think we can also introduce him as someone who upheld certain principles which are of a value, but did not actually live up to those principles in his own life in many instances. That doesn't diminish the value of the principles.
No, you're right.
I mean, for example, Gandhi, I think he looked at power differential in a broad societal sense or political sense. He didn't look at it as how it was reflected in everyday life. And, for example, he perpetrated domestic violence against his wife. I understand, on a number of occasions. However, he did publicly announce that he had done that. So he acted in a way that was transparent, yet I never heard of Kasturba having a voice in the matter. So
that's his wife, is it?
Yes, that was his wife. So it was Gandhi who perpetrated domestic violence against her, and it was Gandhi who said in public that he'd done that and that was wrong. What I think we would want to look at from our perspective is that his wife would have a voice. So even Gandhi's admission, in some sense, maintained his power, because it was within his power to admit to having perpetrated domestic violence without promoting the voice of the person he victimized. So I think that's an example of where he didn't apply some very elemental principles of nonviolent resistance to his own life very well and his intimate relationships. But I don't think that diminishes the principles. I don't think it diminishes the principle of equality, the principle of resisting harm without doing harm. It just so happens that he did harm in that instance.
Yeah. And you know, then the question comes about where, you know, we all have a position to take when we've done wrong, that we can apologise and move on and not be labelled as a wronging for the rest of our lives from something that we might have done in our past that wasn't okay. Yeah, it's a hard one. There's a yin and a yang here.
Yeah, but if we apply Gandhi and his wife Kasturba to the practice of NVR, you know, and our clients, the parents we work with, practicing nonviolent methods, there are times when they are flawed. There are times when they escalate. There are times when, in spite of their best intentions and their commitment and their announcement not to be violent or harmful towards their child, they do raise their voice. Maybe they end up smacking their child. Maybe they end up saying things that are hurtful or derogatory. And it's an important part of our work that they are supported in taking responsibility for that, also towards the child and towards the community they live in, and also creating space wherever that is possible, unless it leads to the child acting further in an abusive way, giving space to the voice of the child who has been harmed.
Yeah, that's the key part, isn't it? To the voice of the child that has been harmed by the actions that you had taken. So
yeah, which does not diminish the right of the parent to constructively resist, but they need to do that, I guess, in order to attain and maintain their moral authority to resist.
yeah. Yeah. Who's your hero then?
Well, I think I've moved my allegiance quite a bit to Rosa Parks.
Yeah.
A lot of the women in the movement. I also have some heroes and heroines who are not always nonviolent. I think of Harriet Tubman. I think, of people like that, who were involved in abolitionism. Incredibly brave people who did things, that I don't believe I would be able to accomplish. At the same time, I think it's important to have an awareness that heroism can be spelled with a small h. I think many of my clients do things, accomplish things where I wonder, in the same situation, would I be able to do that? The mother who says, from now on, I'm not going to bring the food up to your room. I think of that as a heroic act. And though I've coached her in doing that, sometimes I think, she's an inspiration to me.
Yeah, the work we do brings about a lot of that for me. The strength that I witness in parents and how they bring about change in their relationship with their child, and the courage that they show and the strength and determination is heroic.
And who's your hero?
Well, mine aren't so politically brilliant. Mine's my mum. Bless her little soul. She's dead, but she's my hero. For all the right reasons. But yeah, just strength. And back in the 60s, with 3 kids, not easy.
As a single parent.
As a single parent. So
she would have had to have stood up to a lot of indignities and difficulties.
Oh, massive, absolutely huge. And how she overcome them and just trod on with light. Yeah, just such a big hero, my mom. Yeah.
What do you feel that identification, that's the wrong word, identification with her, that inspiration you have received from her gives you for your work as a practitioner in NVR? Yeah,
I think parental strength was something I would label my mum with. She had buckets of it. And I think that's why I do this work, is from my own parental strength that I inherited from her. And and like you just described, working with a family, that you coached a parent to take those steps, to make that stand, to refuse a demand and to take a stand against that non-violently. And you coached her to get there, but ultimately she did it. And I think that's the same for me. It's my mother's parental strength I've inherited as a parent, and also witness in the parents I work with, to allow them to, not allow them, that sounded really privileged, to explore with them ways of which they find their own internal strength and utilise it to an advantage of which helps repair their relationships. I think,
A toast to Mum.
Oh, bless her little heart. Yeah, a toast to Mum. They're great. Not all of them, I know, but mine was. Okay. Are we done? I can't see you now. I don't know what you're doing, but
yeah. Oh, I see. I've been making hand gestures to you, but obviously they go out into the ether.
Can't see you, so we're at about 30 minutes. That's handy, right? So it's goodbye from me.
Okay, and goodbye from me.